Hello and welcome back to HEMAFightBreakdowns. Today I want to talk about multiple feints, or feinting multiple times in one sequence in order to get a specific response. This is something that a lot of people do, but I think a lot of people don't train it in a way that is conducive to success. And I think a lot of people think of it as just a bunch of confusing actions and then an attack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this clip and then we're going to break down, why they can be successful and how to train them. So in this case, obviously, I was not successful. I landed right in my opponent's guard, and he got a very nice middle Hals Verkow thing right to my arms. But leading up to this, the first thing to point out is that a good feint, if you want to break it down this way, is all about telling your opponent as much true information as possible while it's still being false. What that means is when you're going for your attack on a feint, you have to know that the more cues you give that tell you you're going to do something simple, the more likely your feint is to succeed. However, what you have to bank on is the fact that, one, your opponent has basically determined before the exchange even starts that they are going to parry or they are going to be defensive, and that they are going to wait for the successful feedback of that parry to then throw their after blow, their next cut, their second intention. If you want to imagine it like boxers punching each other in the face, if you throw a punch at air, you're not supposed to respond because that punch had no ability to reach you. Therefore, in order to feint a punch, you have to be in the situation where you could land a punch, where you could land a strike. And also, you have to pull it short in a manner that actually improves the follow-up. So what do I mean by that? In this particular case, the second I come up into this position, I am feinting a Oberhau, maybe a cut straight down the middle, though by this point, it is clearly a left Oberhau that I'm feinting, or a right Oberhau in my case, a left Oberhau for my opponent. And the second they see this visual information, they put up the parry that they expect is going to help them. And this is, again, a smart thing to do. The reason that this multiple feint almost works is because when I deny the feedback of touching my sword to his sword and landing in his guard and basically telling his brain that his parry was successful, what I do is I continue a cycle of defensive mentality. When you are training a parry and a riposte, you need that feedback, that physical, mental, visual feedback of having successfully parried to know when to throw your follow-up. And if you don't get that information, it is highly, highly, highly unlikely that a follow-up is going to come. Which means that if you can get someone into this pattern of trying to defend, waiting for that feedback and never receiving it, you can get them to commit to parries one after the other, after the other, after the other, and wait for them essentially to overcommit to something and open themselves up somewhere so that you can land what is essentially a free attack. In this case, it doesn't work. Now, the reason it doesn't work is not because I simply walked into range, flailed about, and then I happened to be parried. It's because this initial parry from my opponent, despite the fact that it didn't get the feedback that it wanted, did know immediately that upon the visual feedback saying that, oh, the threat is still coming, they simply very calmly put up their guard in the other position. But what you can notice here is that the parry from the first one was a little bit smaller, a little bit more efficient, and far more likely to deliver a follow-up than this one. This one is far closer to the body. The tip and the blade are not in great position to do a follow-up from here specifically. So in a sense, my feint into my second attack worked in at least getting me something of a beneficial position. Now, the problem, as I experience, is that I then pull up and go into my left Verkow, but I don't actually throw it, and I instead try to do a hanging parry. And my mistake here, I believe, is that I did not continue to take advantage of the position that I had gained myself. I instead thought, okay, I just received the feedback on my sword that said my opponent parried me very well, which means a follow-up attack is coming. So I just covered the most likely spot that I thought I was going to be attacked on. My opponent very intelligently just went for the other option, this middle how to the belly, and, got a nice clean hit out of the way. So the idea here is that when doing multiple feints, your win condition essentially is getting your opponent stuck in a loop. But that loop goes both ways. You have to continue the loop of feinting attacks or leveraging position until you get what you want, which is an opening you can capitalize on. Similarly, the person who is defending has to very calmly stand there and parry what they think are real attacks, but that turn out to be feints, over and over again until they finally catch real sword and they get real feedback that tells them what to do next. So if I was going to basically critique myself here, what I would tell you is that when doing multiple feints, you have to commit yourself to taking advantage and staying on the offense while you have your opponent stuck in their defensive loop. And if I have any advice for people who find that they are getting defeated a lot by these multiple feint scenarios, what you have to make sure of is that you have two basic responses anytime you throw up a parry. The one is if you throw a parry and you feel nothing, you immediately go and cover the opening that you have. For example, if you try to parry to your left, immediately cover to your right if you feel nothing touch your sword. 9 times out of 10, that's going to save you, just like it did here. Also, to know that when you do successfully parry, you have to leverage the position you have gained immediately. Otherwise, you risk giving up the tempo that you've taken and giving up the advantage that you've taken and just allowing your opponent to continue to blitz you down and throw a bunch of stuff, knowing that you're stuck in the loop. So breaking out of that loop is something that both people need to be wary of, and both people benefit from differently. All right, that's going to be it for today. If you'd like to see your own footage featured on the channel, feel free to send me an email over at HEMAFightBreakdowns@gmail.com, and I hope to see you next time.